Welcome back to the Mark Prater podcast, where our aim is to connect our global family of churches with our executive director. Hey, Mark, you talked about a couple weeks ago what you saw God revealing in Sovereign Grace pastors and some of the encouraging things that you saw there. I wanted to ask you today something, just turn it a little bit differently and ask you, what do you think God might be working in us, growing us and changing us when it comes to this season of navigating through the pandemic?
It's a timely question because God is using this pandemic, I think, to work in all of us, the pastors and members of Sovereign Grace churches. And, the first response is, I don't know all that God is doing, but
Right.
my faith has been stirred recently as I've observed what God is doing, I believe, in us as a family of churches. It really is captured in Romans 5, verses 3 and 4. We rejoice in our sufferings,
Mm,
knowing that our suffering produces endurance. So there's an endurance that we are growing in as a denomination.
yeah.
And endurance produces a character, and there's a growing character, Christ-like character that I see in our pastors and the members of our churches. And character produces hope. And during this time, we have the hope of the gospel, and that hope is
Yeah.
being deepened. And I just think this work in us is preparing us for how God is about to use us.
Yeah. I think so too. And what are your thoughts about what it is that God might be preparing us for going forward?
Yeah, I think God's going to use this pandemic to bring about a wonderful advancement of the gospel of
Mm,
Jesus Christ. I'm like you, like many of our pastors, probably many of our members, praying for revival.
yeah.
Ray Ortland encourages us that way so well.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to participate in that especially when we're able to gather together again as churches. I just really believe unbelievers in the unchurched are going to come out of this
Mm,
pandemic coming into our churches, and we want to be prepared with to give them hope that has been deepened in our lives.
yeah.
By the way, John Piper just wrote a book. Many guys probably see this by the time this podcast arrives in their inbox. Coronavirus and Christ.
Yeah.
And the president of Desiring God reached out to CJ yesterday and said, we want to give that book to all the members and pastors in Sovereign Grace churches. The ebook's
Wow.
available for free, but we'll send you the hard copy as well. So
Yeah.
our pastors will probably receive an email by the time they get this podcast, and you tell Aaron how many you need, and we're going to send those out.
That's wonderful. And haven't read the book yet, but have seen some excerpts and hearing good things about it. You had mentioned there was a quote in the book that you enjoyed as you were thinking about preparing for the future and what God's working in us in this season. You want to share that quote with us?
Yeah, I can't wait to share this quote because it stirred my faith for what God is about to do through our family of churches. So this is
Mm,
what Piper says. We may think the coronavirus outbreak is a setback for world missions. I doubt it.
mm,
Sounds like Piper, doesn't it?
yeah.
God's ways often include apparent setbacks that result in great advances. And I just think we're about to participate in a great advancement of the gospel.
Yeah. May it be so.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that there is an opportunity here for us to sort of recalibrate,
Mhm.
as we think through maybe more deeply than we ever have about our ecclesiology and missiology and how we want to function as a church moving forward. And I think that could be a wonderful blessing for us to be forced to pause and reflect on these things in preparation for what's ahead. Anything else you want to
Yeah.
add?
Well, as we reflect, let's do what Romans exhorts us to do. Let's rejoice.
Yeah.
Let's encourage one another in the growth that God is doing in us so that our joy overflows as God uses us to advance the gospel. Let's rejoice.
Yeah. Amen. Speaking to a friend in Sovereign Grace, another pastor, I loved what he said when it came to that category of hope that you described that God's doing, where he's been exhorting his church. We're not just getting excited and hoping for being together again on a Sunday. This is an
Mhm.
opportunity for our hope to deepen in the great day when actually we'll be gathered with all the believers throughout history with Christ. And so trust that God's doing that in us as well.
Amen. May that be.
Thanks, Mark. And thank you, everybody, for watching the podcast. And we'll be back right here very soon. See you then.
Thank you for watching. If you have questions or comments, Mark would love to hear from you. For more videos like this, hit subscribe on YouTube or by email at markkprater.com.